Sure.
So
I mean, we have
even
eroding.
if you think even if you think you're not affected by it, you are.
Well, sure. I mean, we have eroding civil rights. You don't know when the SWAT teams come busting through the front door because somebody's been arrested and trying to give information to get out from underneath their trouble, point the finger at somebody else, sometimes wrongly. We read about these SWAT raids where people dressed up like military invaders coming busting through homes to try and get in before the drugs get flushed down the toilet and shooting the Labrador Retriever on the way. I mean, the stories are just horrendous. And then, and it's so easy to have police power used to excess and abusively and discriminatorily in a war on drugs. And someone who's using drugs or alcohol, they have no rights. They forfeited them at the door, giving law enforcement a carte blanche authority to abuse them with there being no remedy. We have minority communities, African Americans and Latinos, locked up grossly disproportionate to any formula, rate of drug use, rate of drug sales. In the book Michelle Alexander wrote called The New Jim Crow, where she's talking about mass incarceration being the means of basically discriminating against African Americans principally. That's her thesis through the war on drugs, where you can't discriminate in this country, the United States, anymore about race, creed, color, ancestry, etc. But if we convict somebody of a crime, including a drug crime, well, now we can deprive them of public housing, of public benefits, of military service. You can't work for the post office. You can't get a Pell Grant. You can't stay in public housing. You're not eligible for food stamps. So it's a means to disable, disenfranchise, taking the vote away from people who've been convicted of crimes. It's really just the heart of so many societal problems. That it needs to end, and we soon will universally be in favor of ending the war on drugs for those who are still hesitating.
I think so. I think, again, once you're educated on the issues, you can't help but be in favor for some type of alternative plan, because it's evident that the one that we're embracing now is not only not working, but it's working against us.
It was an altruistic, magnanimous objective that we had in mind when we started this war on drugs, at least as the politicians sold it. And I'm not so sure it was ever even so magnanimous and altruistic when we started. Maybe it sounded good, we're going to save our kids from drugs. But in fact, it's done just the opposite. It's made life incredibly more difficult for youngsters. In the Chicago Tribune, or Sun-Times rather, just last week, they had an article where they had done a survey of teens in Cook County, and I found this statistic to be interesting. They reported that they polled all these high school students, and about 29% of all students were offered, sold, or given an illegal drug by someone on school property during the last year.
Wow.
It's incredible. And then about
really
33% of all students have used marijuana at least once.
Yeah, well, I've heard it said time and time again, it's much easier for them to get the uncontrolled substances than it is for them to get alcohol.
Sure. You know, the interesting thing is that the politician is in favor of the drug war because it gets him votes. The drug dealer and the drug cartels are in favor of the drug war because it's the foundation for the business. Just as Al Capone was in favor of the prohibition of alcohol, so too are the drug dealers and the drug gangs. And then the final clinker is that law enforcement is in favor of the drug war, being on the same side as the bad guys, because so many people in law enforcement are riding the drug war gravy train. Clinton says we have so much crime in this country that we need to hire 100,000 policemen. We build prisons to the point where we can't pay for schools, the prison bill being just outlandish and gobbling up public funds. We have the people who build the prisons in favor of it, the subcontractors, the people who drive the buses to transport the people to and from jails. We've got the newspapers, magazines, TV, and radio that get money for putting anti-drug advertising on to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Because we've got so much drug problem, we need drug courts, we need more judges, probation officers, parole officers. We need people to do the drug testing. Somebody's got to have the drug testing concession. Somebody's got to collect the sample. We're buying helicopters to go spray poison on other countries. Somebody's got the Roundup contract. We've got cities, villages, and municipalities that are getting half of the money that comes from some drug war raid and seizure. Half goes to the feds and half goes to the local law enforcement agency, so that the local governments are benefiting, third-party beneficiaries of a drug war that doesn't work. So many people are benefiting financially. Who's against the drug war? Who's against it? The good guys are for it. The bad guys are for it. The cartels are for it. The politicians are for it. The ministers historically have been giving their down with dope, up with hope speeches and not saying a word about the evils of the drug war itself. Yeah. So because of the drug war gravy train, that's the reason this policy that has failed so mightily for 40 years is still in place.
Yeah, I think there would still be a lot of work for people in other aspects without focusing on the drugs. On like nonviolent drug offenders. Do you have any statistics in reference to, this is just off the top of my head, but in reference to the number of nonviolent offenders in jail as opposed to the number of, heinous violent offenders that are behind bars, and perhaps even some insight on the weight of their sentencing? I know a lot of times that someone will be arrested and convicted on drug charges that are not necessarily like supplying or dealing, but they're getting a very heavy sentence. If it's, say it's just personal use or something like that, they're getting a very heavy sentence, whereas when we have rapists and murderers coming through, they're actually getting less time. So you have a nonviolent offender who's really, either self-medicating for medical reasons or mental reasons, or just using it recreationally, but they're not hurting anyone in that process. Stacked up against somebody, do you have any statistics on that?
The criminal justice system is really out of whack. In the federal prison system, 60% of the people in federal prison are there for drug offense. In the state prison system, 40% of the people that are there are for a drug offense. I can't give you a specific percentage of what is nonviolent of those particular percentages, but a large percent. I would guesstimate half. And I've read, but I don't have a number in front of me at this very moment. But it used to be that we would prioritize murder and armed robbery and rape and crimes where they weren't consensual. There was a defendant and there was a victim. But now we have criminalized behavior that involves voluntary conduct between consenting adults, where somebody wants to sell a drug, somebody wants to consume a drug, and we've made that act a criminal act. And now, how do we deploy our resources? We send 12 guys out to stake out this house to go conduct this 3-month investigation to see who's trafficking, who's coming in, who's going, what their license plates are, what are the descriptions, how often are they coming. And then after we've got enough information, we get a search warrant or we go busting through the doors and conduct a raid. And so all that manpower, all those police and investigators that could be working on murder and armed robbery and crimes where they're victims are redeployed to this useless, counterproductive activity. where they're a beneficiary of what they find.